Well, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. We've got quite a bit of news to go over today. We've got a couple of new posts from our favorite Anon, which highlights the structure of the organized chaos we see on the streets right now. We've got some good news coming out of Washington, D.C., showing that President Trump is doing everything in his power to keep that area safe. Also, it looks like General Mattis has turned redcoat. He is now going up against President Trump in the press, calling him all kinds of crazy things. We also have a neat little theory coming from my friend Dr. Carol Quigley on Twitter, and this is something I've seen floating around, but he put it together in a really interesting way. Also, we have a connection that's been made between that World War Z post that was made accidentally by our favorite Anon the other day and the situation that we are experiencing right now, and guess where it leads? Back to China. And finally, we're going to be checking in with patriots in India. I know that we have some people from India that watch the show here, and I think you'll be surprised to learn how similar the situation is in that country as what we have going on here. Remember that Modi and Trump are allies of each other, and they have similar interests in securing the safety of their nations. So please, everyone, do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor. Father's Day is approaching, and a great gift idea for any dad is the solar water heater. Now, the solar water heater is an amazing new device that allows you to heat and boil water outdoors simply using sunlight. Depending on conditions, the solar water heater can heat water in as little as 30 minutes and will work anywhere the sun shines. You can use it to boil water, cook noodles and rice, or sterilize water for drinking. The solar water heater is the perfect tool in times of need. Limited supplies are available, and this is the very last chance to get it at 15% off the new 2020 model before they sell out. Take advantage now and give your dad the perfect gift this holiday. Please visit solarwaterheater.com. Once again, that's solarwaterheater.com. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. And happy Father's Day. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today we're going to take a look at how the situation we're facing right now in this country is very similar to something that they faced in India as well. Now, as I said, Modi and President Trump are allies, and as a result, obviously, our country is an ally of their country. Now, one thing that's interesting is that George S., that billionaire who likes to cause a lot of disruption, has stated publicly he wants to remove both of those leaders. Well, the person giving us this post, this is from the Donald on Reddit, I believe, but he says, I told my grandfather, who's in India, about our current situation. He told me about a similar situation that happened there some time ago when President Trump visited. So basically, India has been trying to identify who is a legal citizen of the country, kind of in the same way that President Trump is seeking to do the same thing here in America. And their left media is opposing it and framing it as an attack on the minority. Now, there were communal riots in India when Trump came to visit. They were organized by leftists in order to undermine that visit, and this was essentially an attack by a religious group which is focused primarily in the Middle East, and it was on Hindus, which are the primary religious group there in India. But they were attacked with stones, petrol bombs, and then the Hindus there were forced to attack back in defense. And as a result, the media called it a communal clash, whereas it was truly an attack with weapons against Hindus. That was the whole point of it. Hindu shops were burned and vandalized, much like what we're seeing today in America. Hindu shops were marked physically, and then also information was traded on Twitter, much in the same way that that particular group is doing the same thing here in America, communicating on Twitter, and they've recently been exposed to a degree. Now, Hindus were beaten up. We've seen many people here get beaten up. One police officer was murdered. We just had the same thing happen in Brooklyn, New York. And of course, the police responded, and then police brutality was the narrative that was run with by the media. Now, Wikipedia, in the entries on their website, identified Hindus as the main aggressors, but then it turned out that the editor of the page was actually a supporter of that anti-group that we all know too well that is doing this in major cities throughout the United States. There was video footage that was captured showing that political leftists were handing out stones and weapons and Molotov cocktails in the same way that we're seeing take place here in America. And the local leader in the area of the Capitol, which is under leftist control, was found to have lots of bricks on his roof. In the same way, we're seeing bricks dropped off on the corners of cities where these actions are taking place. So we've got a lot of bricks, we've got a lot of petrol bombs, and even catapults to hurl them, all found by independent journalists. Independent journalists here in America are also exposing this incredible action that's being taken against our country. And the leftist media called it the result of racist policies by the Indian Prime Minister Modi trying to identify who is in the country illegally. The whole point being that they want to secure their nation. They want to make sure that people who are legally allowed to be in the country are the ones who remain, and the people who are not there legally will most likely be dealt with because that's the law. But I just thought that this was fascinating, the parallels that we see between India and America, and probably the same organizer of those events trying to get rid of these democratically elected governments is none other than George S., the billionaire. I want to thank Monty for sending this over. Now, it's quite obvious when you compare and contrast these similar events taking place in different countries that there's a playbook that these people have. There's a certain method that they use when they want to cause this unrest. Now, the other thing that is in common is that the instigators are on the left. And if you take a look at where this action is taking place in the United States, all of the cities have a major connection as well, and that is also that they are ruled by the left. Now, I saw somebody recently kind of get angry with me for saying that this is happening in Democrat-controlled areas because both parties have issues, and I'm not disputing that. But what you can't dispute is that each of these people who are the leaders in these cities and states are Democrats. Here is an updated list of major cities in the headlines with this activity right now. Of course, Minneapolis, Democrat mayor. Cincinnati, Democrat mayor. Atlanta, Democrat mayor. Columbus, Democrat mayor. Oakland, Democrat mayor. San Jose, Democrat mayor. Seattle, Democrat mayor. And the list goes on. Denver, NYC, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Phoenix, Dallas, Louisville, Memphis, Houston, Richmond, Fort Wayne, St. Paul, and Bakersfield, the only city that has a Republican mayor. Now, I don't know anything about Karen Go, but the fact that every single other person on this list besides Karen Go is a Democrat, I find to be statistically significant. I'm going to need to do some more investigation on Karen Go and see what type of person she actually is. And to add insult to injury, we have the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. He and the city council have just decided that they're going to cut funding to the LAPD by $100 to $150 million, and they're going to take that money and reinvest it. Now, these people are predictable, if nothing else. What this is going to do is allow them to take $100 to $150 million and reinvest it directly into their pockets. Watch it not go back into the city or to better the lives of the people living there, but I bet you that at least one of them is going to end up with a brand new vineyard, just like Nancy Pelosi. So Eric Garcetti and his people on the city council cutting the budget of the LAPD. I predict that this is going to end very badly for the people of Los Angeles. Things are already bad there right now. The last thing they need is fewer police on the streets. And from post 4407, we'll cycle back to 4406 in just a moment, but this is on the same track as what they're doing in Los Angeles. The city council in Minneapolis is considering disbanding the police altogether. Obviously, they've been getting a lot of bad press as of late, but again, this is not something that's going to be good for the people of Minneapolis. You take a look at what's been happening recently, the police not instituting the law, not deciding to uphold public safety and justice, and instead allowing things to just absolutely burn down to the ground, it is not a good idea. Now, there is some people here on the city council who believe that this is going to be the best move for the people of Minneapolis. And unfortunately, I think that they are wrong. People are angry. They are fed up with the decades of abuse that they have had to undergo. But this right here is not going to keep the people of Minneapolis any safer. In fact, it's going to put them at a grave danger, because without law and order, there will be no incentive for people to do the right thing. Hopefully, Minneapolis does not go through with this. Now, the Post itself says, important to understand, only at the precipice, moment of destruction, will people find the will to change. I believe that that is a direct statement on the police officers there in Minneapolis. It's their imminent destruction that is on the precipice. They are the ones who are going to be disbanded, and perhaps this is what it's going to take for them to change the way that they do things. Now, this could also be a direct statement to the people of Minneapolis themselves, because without the police, they are going to be utterly destroyed. Criminals will run rampant in the streets. This is a very tough issue. Obviously, we have a problem with police in this country to a degree, but we also have a problem with criminals to a degree. And I think that it all stems from the exact same place. We have lost our moral compass as a society, and this is what we need to work on. We need to be people who come together. We need to be willing to work together for a common goal, and that is for the betterment of all mankind. Now back to 4406, we go back to post 3608. All assets, foreign and domestic, being deployed. Some who once supported POTUS, sleepers, have and will turn puppets and puppet masters. Control of narrative equals control of public opinion. Control of public opinion equals power. Everything is at stake. Old guard power structure being destroyed. Washington Civil War, control the narrative. Prevent exposure of truth. Self-preservation, fighting for survival. Information warfare. And what just happened today? General Mattis turned on President Trump. Now, General Mattis came out today with a statement basically saying that President Trump is doing a horrible job, that he's destroying the country. And of course, President Trump has responded. Now, he said probably the only thing that Barry and I have in common is that we both had the honor of firing Jim Mattis, the world's most overrated general. Now, in a statement, General Mattis said that federal soldiers under Trump's command were ordered to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens by clearing Lafayette Park of protesters on Monday. He said we must reject and hold accountable those in office who would make a mockery of our Constitution. President Trump said he felt great about asking Mattis to resign. He also said that he preferred the nickname Mad Dog for Mattis rather than Chaos. Mattis apparently hated the nickname Mad Dog given to him by Marines under his control. And reports have noted that privately President Trump called him Moderate Dog after Mattis was routinely sympathetic with Dems and the foreign policy establishment. Now, this letter released by Mattis at his resignation back in December of 2018, he said he adamantly opposed President Trump's decision to pull troops from Syria. When he said that at that time, I knew that something wasn't quite right with General Mattis. Why would he not want us to pull our troops out of Syria? That entire conflict was absolutely manufactured and disingenuous. The reasons that we were supposedly there were fictitious. It was more about stopping Syria from having a gold-based currency as it was about anything. Now, Trump said he was disappointed by Mattis's performance, and he referred to the military mythology that followed him. He said his primary strength was not military, but rather his personal public relations. President Trump also said he was disappointed with Mattis's leadership of the military, despite funding the Department of Defense at record levels. He said, I gave him a new life, things to do, and battles to win, but he seldom brought home the bacon. I didn't like his leadership style or much else about him, and many others agree. Glad he is gone. Now, General Mattis never had a bad thing to say about President Trump until he was actually let go. And now, in the midst of everything that's taking place, I think President Trump has been doing a phenomenal job. I think that the clearing of Lafayette Square was something that needed to happen. It was absolute lawlessness. There is a difference between peaceful demonstrations and rioting and setting fires to buildings. And that's exactly what we've had taking place over the last week or so. General Mattis, I believe, is one of those sleeper agents that we were just told about. I'll show you another reason that I don't trust General Mattis. Here he is shown with the classic black eye, the left eye, something we've seen on many different occasions. Looks like he got punched right there on the side of the face, which is something we see all too often with members of the Cabal. Looks like he actually probably got some stitches right there. That is a nasty cut. But this is the kind of thing that we're just too used to seeing. I have to question everything about General Mattis, having seen this black eye photo right here. Now, Laura Logan had something to say about this. She said, hearing what General Mad Dog Mattis had to say today, I'm reminded of something I learned about Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense during the transition as the president-elect was about to take the oath of office. Several sources inside the transition team confirmed they were shocked by who Mattis wanted as his number 2. He was pushing for Michelle Flournoy, the same person HRC had reportedly picked to lead DOD in her administration, according to sources and articles at the time, such as one Politico article published in November of 2016. They put it this way: the next administration, Hillary Clinton's history-making defense secretary in waiting. Always wondered why Mattis would want someone like this at his side. Seems unlikely she would have been loyal to the president she would have served. Was he loyal? Men like him knew General Flynn was loyal to the U.S., not Russia, yet they have said nothing. As Secretary of Defense, Mattis would have had access to all intelligence. What happened to that military code of honor in Flynn's case? What about his commander-in-chief? He was silent then, but not now. I think that hearing that, it is a definite that Mad Dog is a sleeper agent and President Trump did the right thing by getting rid of him. I will ignore everything that Mattis says from here on out. And then, of course, you can't forget this. Mattis broke with President Trump in supporting the Iran nuclear deal. I think that we have seen enough evidence to show us the type of man that Mattis is. Thank you to @MN41020 for the thread on Twitter. All right, now also sent over by my friend Monty. Here is a thread from someone named Lily Starseed on Twitter. We show post 4392, mistakes to some are roadmaps to others. Now, this user on Twitter speculates if our favorite Anon is specifically referring to this image right here. Now, this was a bit of a controversy the other day because we had this image posted by our favorite Anon, and it seemed to show that MSDNC had used a screen grab from World War Z to make it look like Philadelphia was in a much worse state than it actually was. It turned out that it was actually just a random account who was basically making a joke gag video, but the user is asking us if they are pointing specifically at World War Z. Now, if you don't know anything about World War Z, it's about a zombie pandemic that is caused by a virus. Now, if you remember back to post 1067, it said China Chongqing. Now, the reason that that is relevant in this instance is because if you look at the plot of World War Z, the virus actually originates from Chongqing in China. It is a very interesting connection, and I'm wondering if it's possible that maybe this is asking us to look at that again, kind of giving us the parallel for that movie to what we're seeing here in our country right now. It's a pretty neat thread. I'm going to leave it in the pinned comment below so you guys can check it out and tell me what you think. All right, and finally, from my friend Dr. Carol Quigley on Twitter, he has a thread here about Big George and a theory about what could have happened. Now, this is something that's been floating around recently. My friend Neon Revolt did an entire podcast on it earlier today. If you haven't subscribed to Neon, I suggest that you go ahead and do that. But Carol says, wouldn't it be a crazy plot twist? Big George being involved in a counterfeit money laundering ring, along with the police who dispatched him. Would that explain the coincidence of them working together? Now, remember that Chauvin and Big George, they worked together at a bar that had been recently closed down due to the CV-19 situation. And it was Big George who was originally supposedly arrested with a counterfeit $20 bill. Seemed like a bit of overzealousness in terms of law enforcement, but That's how things are happening in the country nowadays. Now, Carol continues, imagine a scenario where a corrupt officer has access to counterfeit cash and conducts dirty business through his side hustle as a security guard. Big George gets busted and the corrupt cop silences the witness. Other cops are complicit or ignorant. Now, there was just recently an arrest warrant issued for one of those police officers. The charges were also transferred to all of the officers, but Carol says it's not unheard of. Here's an article with an example of that very thing happening. Low country police officer steals counterfeit money and goes on a shopping spree. And of course, it's not that big of a stretch to think that that could actually happen in another place. And I have to go back to the idea that these two gentlemen both worked security at the same bar restaurant, and that the idea that they didn't know each other is, in fact, a big stretch. Now, Carol continues, just think about it. Even Floyd's attorney thinks they knew each other, and it should be a first-degree charge. This is big if it's true. Now, add into that the fact that that club where they worked was owned by a Jordanian person who aided and abetted people in a T organization, and the feds would not allow the DOJ to revoke his citizenship. He says, I know Twitter follows don't mean much, but here is the owner of the club these guys worked for. Top of her list include John Brennan, Preet Bharara, Ben Rhodes, and others. So it's possible this club was likely a cartel front. It gives Derek, the officer, some motive and incentive to take out Big George. Very interesting. Here is the owner right here, Maya Santamaria. And then here are her follows. And these are some big names in the cabal. Now, my friend Truthhammer included a clip from the episode of Waters World where Jesse Waters gets into the idea that perhaps this was an orchestrated hit. Let's go ahead and look at the video.
More than we do, Dana, and he's got investigators looking into the relationship between the officer and Floyd. Because if you think about it, I'm only speculating, you don't just jam your knee onto the neck of a guy that you don't know for no reason. Yes, maybe he's some insane racist that just wanted to kill an innocent black man. It's possible. It's just not likely, in my opinion. From what we know, they worked at the same club together, a nightclub which had a lot of suspicious activity. People should be looking into the nightclub. Was it a front for something? Was there any sort of trafficking going on? They worked closely together on a regular basis. Also, Floyd, rumored to have moonlit in another industry, which is kind of provocative. There could be a lot of reasons that their relationship became controversial. Let's just put it that way. And maybe Floyd knew something he wasn't supposed to know. Maybe there was an operation that we're not aware of that's soon going to be investigated. Because if you have a guy kneeing a guy in the neck like that over a counterfeit 20, and you have the rest of the crew standing around and watching, it looks like a premeditated hit. And then when you have the first report to come out to say, oh, you know, he didn't die that way. He had a bad ticker. He was on methamphetamine, all sorts of narcotics in his system. That's highly suspicious, because then other reports came out directly afterwards contradicting that. So there's a lot of things at play, and you could find at the end of the day, this is not racially motivated at all. This was some sort of criminal thing that went haywire, and this was a hit that was executed extremely poorly, and they thought they were going to get away with it, while the rest of the country runs wild and tries to, you know, capitalize on the energy from coming out of a lockdown, and knowing that Biden's not going to ramp up that kind of energy. They got to ride this energy out until November.
Now, Carol continues, okay, I'm obviously days behind on this. Oh, well, at least we're getting eyes on. We have multiple people who have this exact same theory. And Carol continues, I don't feel so crazy since others have already gone down this road. And he continues, is Maya Santamaria Peruvian? Because counterfeiting is art. Peruvian gang of master fabricators churn out $100 bills. And here she is being awarded the Inca Cola, a major Peruvian beverage distributor. And according to police investigators, Quispe is the de facto leader of one of four, perhaps more, sophisticated counterfeiting operations operating out of Lima, Peru, which the U.S. Secret Service has declared as the world's leading producer of counterfeit bills. Apparently, someone has information on her. She has an email address that leads to a resort named Las Serenas in Honduras, and it is a narco island, I suppose. Now, Inca Cola, someone says, I knew a man very well who worked for them as a kapats foreman on their properties in Peru. He hated them to the core of his being. The stuff his sons told me about them would curdle your blood, and that is essentially where it ends. Now, Neon Revolt goes into even more information. Apparently, there was a large shipment of counterfeit bills which were discovered in Minneapolis. They came through on the railroad, which is a majority owned by Bill Gates himself. When you look at all of the various people who are now tangentially connected to this situation, you have to ask yourself. And when Jesse Waters is on Fox News asking the questions, we're not crazy. Well, guys, I gotta say that counterfeit connection between those two men in Minneapolis, that restaurant, and the Peruvian angle, that is probably the most stunning news I heard today. Hopefully, this is going to be something that the Justice Department is going to get to the bottom of. There are too many strange tangential connections between the deep state, all of these people involved there in Minneapolis. Something is not right. It smells to high heaven. And whatever happened in the end, these people deserve justice. And we deserve the right to live our lives in a free and fair and just society. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, one more thing. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has supported the channel. If you're interested in doing more, there is always links in the description below. I have the merch store. Of course, I also have the backup channels. Please subscribe to those. If you take a look up here, you're going to see a couple of other videos. There's also a spot to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And if you are subscribed, I ask you to please check and make sure that you're still subscribed and your notifications are turned on. Thank you everybody for watching the program, and I will see you tomorrow.